So in this section of the course, I'm going to talk a little bit about the terms anxiety, stress, burnout, and trauma. There are some notes to go along with it. I'm not going to really read those, just talk a little bit about it. There is also a web in there for you to fill out if that's helpful to you, really just to, again, bring it back to yourself or people you know and thinking through, like, are these things that I'm dealing with, or where did this come from? What does it look like? And just kind of building the pathway for that. And so stress is normal. A little bit of stress is normal for everybody. It's just the way life goes. And we know that life is not always going to be easy, whether we want it to or not. There's always going to be little things that come up. So I have two sons, and both of them have been in therapy. And my best answer for what stress is really is what they talked to them about when they were in therapy. And it's really just the idea that a long time ago, we were worried about being killed by animals, right? And so the way our body works is when there's a huge event happening, it makes your heart race and it makes you sweat and it makes everything just feel tense and anxious and, just yucky in your belly. And so now we don't have those things happen on a normal basis. Doesn't mean they never happen, but it doesn't happen often. And so it's kind of like, all right, so how's my body working through this now with little things? And so we call it fight or flight. And so some little thing might set us off. For me, it's money. I'll talk about that later. But things set us off, and then our heart starts racing and we start sweating. Even though we're not in harm's way, we feel unsafe. And so that's really where stress comes from. And then anxiety is also just like building up on that and just thinking through, like, what are those connections between those stressful events? Again, for me, money is one of those things. And so money makes me stressed, which causes anxiety, which causes me over a longer period of time to have feelings of doubt about myself, to have trouble with sleeping, to have panic attacks, and this is a real thing for me. It's more of a chronic issue that it just keeps happening repeatedly. And so it's something that I deal with. It's something that is part of who I am. Like I had talked about earlier, even from being a little girl, I had belly aches quite a bit. And so it's something I've dealt with my whole life. So could it be that I was born with it? Sure. For me, that part doesn't matter. It's recognizing it, understanding it, and being able to truly, literally tell myself, you'll be okay, you're safe, this isn't, something to fear. Or this is something to fear, you need to escape this situation. And so, you kind of go back and forth, and I'll share some details about what that looks like in a little bit. So then here's some things about burnout. If you think about burnout, a lot of it has to do with work. And depending on what your job is, I'm not saying every job is horrible or even that any job is horrible, but when you continually have anxiety that's due to things happening at work, it can be a buildup that turns into what's called burnout. And basically, that has to do with just continued stress, energy depletion. It makes a lot of people have issues with cynicism. They start being very bitter about people around them or the job that they have themselves. Again, I will talk about this for my own personal journey, but unfortunately, this has become another epidemic with people, especially since COVID. I didn't even want to say that word when I was getting this figured out, but it's, the elephant in the room possibly, that it caused us to have some issues that just haven't gotten better yet, or maybe never. Made a lot of people quit their jobs, just the stress that they were under of performing. I just think of like in healthcare clinics, that kind of stuff. It was just, a really hard time. Same thing with education, which is part of my story. So really just thinking through, burnout is just one of those pieces that goes alongside anxiety. and then can lead to issues with depression or those kinds of things. The last one I want to hit on, and I'm not talking a lot about trauma other than my own story, but trauma is based on specific events. And so there are a lot of people that have trauma from their childhood. That's probably one you hear a lot about. Mine, unfortunately, was dealing with work. And so trauma is another area that really is hitting people hard in their adult lives, that they're having a hard time getting beyond things because of something from their past, because they're continually triggered by it. And so really the point of this is just to know, what are your triggers, if you have any, of anxiety, of stress, of trauma, of burnout. And so just realizing that maybe that's something that you need to be working through, or again, the people around you. So if somebody around you, maybe at work, is very cynical lately, and you know that has not always been the case, it might be something they're dealing with. If your child is really struggling lately, doesn't want to go to some event or school or whatever, it's good to know and to have those conversations and look for those patterns. To me, the key is connections and patterns with everything like this. And so the next section, I'm going to be really talking about my story and where that comes from. But just know that understanding and researching more about these will help to just normalize, not that you have it or that somebody around you has it, but to understand it and to be able to go forward.